in a page. Okay, I think that is good. Okay, anybody? Hopefully we've got some people here now live. We are live, and let's go. Okay, so this is our first YouTube live stream of Shifty Perspective. So sorry for the a few minutes of delay, I guess. I can see that it is working. So let us know in the comments. I've got the live comments up so I can respond. And I'm not sure if David can respond, but hopefully he can if you've got any questions. This video is our 6th podcast, and it's been going great so far. Again, thank you for everybody joining in. Our guest today on episode 6 is a film director. He has 6 books, I believe, best-selling author, and he has spoken on Tedx. He is David Simpson, and he is live with us now, all the way from Canada. Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me, Ash. It's 7 books right now.
7 books. Well, are these
8?
You're working on 8. Are these all in your in the same series?
No, I've got 5 in the Posthuman series, and then another book called Dawn of the Singularity, and then another book called God Killers, which is like a horror novel, but the rest of them are science fiction.
Okay. Are your books all fiction?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They're all fiction.
And do you have any plan on writing any non-fictions at any point?
At some point maybe, but right now my focus is definitely on the fiction. It's definitely on the novels, and
Yes.
then getting the novels actually turned into movies. I think of myself really as a storyteller. So it's like I absolutely love writing novels. I'm definitely a novelist. I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to do when I'm writing, but at the same time, when I make a movie, I get the exact same feeling.
So how long did it take you to make because you've just finished, right, your latest film, your full length, this is your first feature film, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How long has that been in the works for?
Oh, a long time. It's actually now been, we're starting to get those Facebook notifications. It's sort of funny to see from the first days of filming in 2016. So it's 4 years ago. We finished the movie, and we finished it back in the fall, but it took 3.5 years. It wasn't 3.5 years of filming, obviously, but it was the post-production took quite a while. But it was because the post-production was just really me and my wife and the actors, as far as lending their voices to ADR afterwards when your dialogue replace. But other than that, it was us, and we learned everything. I'm really glad we did. I love the way it worked out. But to become professional at everything, it took a while.
So how did you actually learn? Did you just learn as you go, as you went, everything?
Yeah, I think in a way. I mean, when we started the movie, there's a great thing about ignorance.
Yeah.
Is if you knew more, you might not try some things, and so when we started the movie, we felt, because I'd done a short film. That's the only other thing I'd done, and the short film was a proof of concept for the Posthuman novels, and it was only 5 minutes long, so it had a lot of VFX. Going through the process of trying to make that, and I was trying to do it working with production companies that are here in Vancouver. I couldn't help it. The training that I have from writing the science fiction novel series is about digital technology and technological trends and the advancement, and I'm looking at the way that movies are being made, and I'm thinking there's so many ways that this could be improved, especially with the technology that was just coming online at the time. So I eventually I convinced my wife to let me try this. I convinced her that we could actually make it on our own, and we did. It did really well, and it got a lot of press, and then it got me contacted by Management 360 in Hollywood, and they wanted scripts, and so it was pretty successful. But I was also thinking that the one component that we weren't able to that the technology wasn't quite there for us to do just in-house on the level that we needed was like VFX. We still would need visual effects help with a big budget, worthy science fiction movie.
Isn't
But
that the
everything
most
else,
expensive part?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Okay.
and would be the most complex. But we felt that we could make a movie with that was based in the present, um, and is it, so you're not having to pay for costumes or giant sets or VFX really. That there was nothing really stopping us anymore from reaching the level of productions that cost a lot more, and that's what we did. So
Great.
I wrote a psychological thriller that's dangerous to know, and somehow convinced a few actors to go along with it, and found locations, and then we filmed, and then the post production started, but it remained, one thing after another, learning that particular crossing that bridge when we came to it. So something like sound design, um, and yeah, we did it. We just knocked them out one at a time.
Great. And did you do all of that from Vancouver and from your house? Did you do the editing at home, or did you rent out like a studio? Or
Uh, right here, pretty
nice,
much everything happened right here in the studio,
cool,
and this is in my house. It's just a second bedroom, basically converted into post-human media,
cool.
and the as far as the filming goes, it was Vancouver, and then we filmed in Pemberton, British Columbia. It's 2 hours north. It's a very small but very beautiful little town, and I think about half the movie takes place there. So we're able to
Nice.
use the incredible natural landscape to our advantage. It's beautiful.
I saw I think there's a few trailers out, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of trailers.
Yeah,
There's a short 90-second one, and then there's one that's just under 4 minutes long
I
that
think
we
I've
put
seen
out.
that one.
Yeah,
Quite
that's
scary.
yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's going to be pretty thrilling. It looks quite dark, almost macabre.
Yeah, it should scare you. Hopefully, you'll be scared. It's it's uh, we did that Kickstarter back
Hmm.
in that was in December and January, and I wanted to make sure that people could get a decent chunk of footage so that when you hear about how the movie's made, immediately you're thinking, well, like, I mean, it can't be good then. but but it is actually really pretty good. But I needed to make sure that I showed some clips, and that's why we put out that second trailer, the 4 minute one, to really show that we're not tricking you. It's not a series of really quick shots and that's it. Enough to give people the sense that yeah, the quality is real, and yeah, it is. I really can't wait for people to see it. They probably would have seen it, or some people would have seen it by now in a festival if the
There were
apocalypse had.
festivals happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, the apocalypse. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Is
So,
uh is there a release date in the pipeline? Is that do you know when that will be, or are you waiting till everything is finished with this
yeah.
current?
Great question. Well, first, no, there is no release date, but the movie's ready. It's a matter of getting distribution, and so we're exploring some things because the film festivals are physically canceled, but some of them are still digital.
Hmm.
Some of them may not be canceled. So, for instance, we're submitting to TIFF, so the Toronto International Film Festival, I think in the next day or two, because I think the deadline's on the 29th, and then our hometown Vancouver International Film Festival as well. And then Sundance just opened, and that's all the way in February. So they
Hopefully.
haven't. Yeah, and so they haven't canceled yet. So we'll see. But at the same time, we are looking for streaming too. And so uh, the we'll see what happens. But things have changed. Like prior to this, I really wanted a theatrical release, and that's really the holy grail. And that would be I mean, just the cherry at the end of this beautiful cake of an experience right on top. Um, but now streaming is actually pretty terrific because the amount of people that are watching things online is skyrocketed. So streaming is something that we're actually really open to now, and it would just depend which service we're a fit with. So if we get a good situation prior to one of the festivals, then we would be open to that for sure.
How does that work? So if you've made a film, do you then have to get an agent, or do you just reach out yourself? What kind of steps do you have to go?
Yeah, it might be a circumstance where it ends up we need an agent. I've got the potential to have a manager if I so choose, and I may end up going with that. For now, what we've been doing is we've been exploring things on our own and making connections, and the connections we've made are really cool. And I wish I could talk more about it, but they're
Secret.
yeah, because we've got a screener that's out there,
Okay.
and what's really another thing that's really cool about the digital revolution with film is that you can, when you put something online, you can get analytics and see when it's being watched and where it's being watched, and so we know that some really famous people, like you'd know who they were if we said
Well,
have seen it,
great.
but we just don't want to we don't want to spoil it yet in
No,
case
of course
we
not.
use their name and and they don't
Yeah,
like
you
that.
don't want a lawsuit from and kind of ruin years of work essentially. So,
Yeah, and they're being so good to just actually watch it. It's we have to remind ourselves, and my wife Jenny and I will sometimes just be saying to each other, "Can you believe so and so watched our movie yesterday?" And it's hard to get our heads around it.
well, what did you do before you did this? Before you started writing? Like, how long have you been doing this for? Because it's yeah, an interesting trajectory. I've never really spoken to anybody who's actually gone down this path and done well and doing well with it.
It's a different trajectory. So I really I'd been writing, and I've known I've wanted actually I've known I've wanted to be a writer since I was 6.
Nice.
But when I was in university, I was in grad school, and this would have been in 2005. That was the first exposure that I had to Ray Kurzweil, because I believe his book, The Singularity is Near, came out that year. I saw just a news article about it actually, and then looked into it more. But the news article itself was all I needed for the inspiration for Posthuman. That like the entire book to come to me just right then, and it was the first time because I'd been in. I went to the University of British Columbia, and one of the things I was in, my degrees are in English literature,
Okay.
uh, but I was in creative writing, and you know I loved writing, but I knew I didn't have that story yet. The one that was just aha, this one people would want to read this. But that night I knew, and it was one. It's like falling in love, I guess. I knew this was the thing, and so I wrote out the whole outline and the first 2 chapters that night, which are almost exactly what is in the book to
In
this
one
day.
night.
Yep, and
Oh, well,
yeah, and it was I don't know if I'll ever have a feeling like that again. I hope I will because it was so incredible. And then that I had to pause that while I finished grad school because it was just so much work. But I finished it right afterwards. I finished my thesis, and I had become so disciplined when I was doing my thesis that I was promising myself on those, because you're getting by on 3 and 4 hours of sleep every night, and the stress is so high, and I promised myself before I run out and start making some money, which would just be, you know, minimum wage kind of money at first. Uh, Once I'm finished, I'm gonna take the time I need, like 3 weeks, to finish that book, and I did. And that was my treat. I finished it. So I had it finished in 2007, but it was 2011, late in 2011, when really the ebook revolution and the Kindle had taken hold enough that that I dared put my books out there.
So
And it
was that
was, yep.
in 2007? Were you just had it unpublished for yourself essentially?
Yeah, yes, I sent it. This isn't even one of those stories where I could say I sent it to a bunch of, you know, agents and publishers that rejected me. I couldn't get a single person to even read it.
Well,
The responses were always, science fiction doesn't sell, because
really?
yeah, this is pre Kindle. I mean, this is not true, but this is what the industry knowledge at the time was, that science fiction doesn't sell. But if you do sell a whole bunch, come back to us.
Oh, really? Then they want to slice.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah,
Damn.
sure. If you succeed without us, come back and we want some money. But anyway, so it was again, it was another news article. This time it was an article. There was a At the time, she was 27 years old back in 2011. Amanda Hawking was just this young woman who wrote fantasy, but she was the second person to sell 1 million copies of her ebook. Now I think a lot of people have done it, but I I realized then, okay, that's it. This is that threshold where ebooks are a real player,
Yeah.
and so I went for it. And I mean, I was really excited. I think it was December was the first month that we had it up in 2011, and I think I sold a little over 100 books, which to someone who's never sold any was like, wow, you don't get very much for that, because we had to sell the
Yeah.
book 99 cents, so like 30 cents. It wasn't like I could maybe buy a pizza with what I, but but then the next month, I think we sold a couple thousand,
Nice.
and it was just I think it was I think it was the middle of 2012 where I was starting to really think it's almost irresponsible for me to keep teaching, because then I had a deal from a publisher that was to write Dawn of Singularity, and I've got this deadline and I've got this advance. I mean, I think I'm a full-time novelist now. Is
Congratulations. That
Yeah,
must have felt amazing.
it did. It was a dream come true. It really was. Thank you for reminding me of that, actually, because when I'm working all the time, I have to remind myself how lucky I am. And then it was I wrote I think up until the fifth book in the post-human series, and then it was then that I thought, it's time for there to be some sort of proof of concept, uh, and I really wanted to force the issue with getting film, um, and that started that journey into seeing that there was a way to hack this, to use the things that you and I are so fascinated with and are interested in, this accelerating return on digital technology, and the fact that cameras are digital, so they're like information technology now. You just saw this was the opportunity. It was actually possible to do this in an affordable way with only a couple of people doing it. Um,
It's
but it was
almost unimaginable, like 15 years ago, even probably sooner than that. It's really, yeah, you have to have a crazy amount of money to make a film, and even making some content online and stuff like that, like YouTube. Now there's so many people who have got millions of subscribers and they've just got a camera phone and they can make it work.
It is incredible. You're so right. I remember it wasn't that long ago. I think it was just before Ginny and I have been together a little over 10 years now. But when I think it was just before we got together, YouTube upped it from, I think it was something like 4 minutes to, oh, you can have a 10-minute video now. And there aren't limits like that anymore. Being
No.
able to put 4K and 8K films really up on YouTube is just extraordinary. And the fact that the cameras are cheap enough now. The camera that we used was an A7S II. There still hasn't been a successor. There's no A7S III yet, but that camera,
A7S2.
yeah, it was 4K, but the thing that was really incredible about it was that the sensor is still the best sensor in the business for low light. It had this great big sensor that allowed for us to write something where we could film sequences outside in the dark, moonless nights, and it can see better than your eyes can.
Whoa,
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it completely changed, because you know the Hollywood look for those things is because of film. And I understand this now, working with some cinema cameras where where the sensor is small and the ISO, you can't go very high. The reason why they have those giant light balloons and everything, they blast everything and they fog the trees, is because you wouldn't be able to see anything otherwise. But with these sensors, you can see, you really can see better than your eyes can. And it gives you so much range in post to make things that look more realistic, but are also, for us, a lot more frightening, a lot more frightening.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did that kind of give you any inspiration, like on thinking about your TEDx? Did that kind of make you think about the possibility of us integrating cameras into our vision,
Oh
at some
yes.
point? Yeah.
Oh yes, I've thought about that a lot. I mean, there's no question. There's no question that we can. I mean, I'm not saying that we could do it right at this moment, but but that it's feasible for us to, in some way. Which way? I think there's a bunch of different ways that it could happen, where we'd be able to remarkably improve our vision. And yeah, that is something I think about all the time, because in the Post-Human series, obviously the characters are enhanced. They're still recognizably human, but
Yeah.
they are advanced, and night vision is one of the things that they've got.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that.
Do you think that we have to be careful about the path that we go down with that kind of thing? I can just off the top of my head, I think in maybe police states, I can imagine in somewhere like China, you could have these. If you have implants which affect your vision, then maybe this could be used against you, and whether that's against people's consent, or maybe collecting advertising data, that kind of thing. Is that something you see will be an issue?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I wouldn't say that these things are, that any of these things are guaranteed, or or it's written in stone that in the future there'll be all these abuses. But it's technology is such a double-edged sword, such a double-edged sword. So unfortunately, I mean, I think there's probably going to be abuses. I mean, that's just a personal, and there's no way for us to know, but it's just a personal hunch, unfortunately, that there will be some. But it's becoming, I mean, it's very exciting, but it's becoming really difficult to predict, even near future scenarios now, as we approach this moment at the technological singularity. Like we're getting closer to having artificial intelligence that is human level, and it'll be superhuman level not long afterwards. And it gets to be, the book that I'm working on right now is called Superhuman, and it'll be out very soon, and it's really gigantic. And this issue is really important to me. It's fictional, Superhuman is, and this is the sixth book in the Post-Human series. It's fictional, but at the same time, is very much informed by the kind of reading that I usually do, which is nonfiction. Like for me, it's always research, and I do think that for the people who would rather, read an adventure and be invested in characters, I'm always inspired by the African writer Chinua Achebe said that that writers are teachers. And when I think about what my my why is, like why do I love writing? And I love entertaining people. I just love writing, but ultimately it's to help people see a little better, and to understand things a little bit more.
Yes.
And so I'm dealing with in that book uh, the prospect of what they call a hard takeoff of artificial intelligence. So things going badly very quickly, and it won't be a surprise to people who are reading the series, because this is happening
Okay.
in a parallel universe, and they know that this happened already, and this is really the nitty gritty, like the nuts and bolts of how it happened, and how one thing that seems very innocuous can end up causing so many problems down the line. So it's a scary time. There's no question
Yes.
about it, but also incredibly exciting. And I think there's so many ways to get it wrong and so many ways to get it right. So if anyone tells you, it's a foregone conclusion that we're doomed, or that we're going to make it for sure, without any serious missteps, I don't think that I think they're either not fully informed yet, and they need to learn a little bit more, or maybe they're just being disingenuous.
I think maybe there'll be a bias, because you have both sides of people that are I've spoke to a lot of my friends about my kind of interest in, especially with things like longevity and life extension and that kind of thing, side of things. And lots of people are very scared of it, and they have this very negative perspective. And then you also have on the other side people who are like, yeah, everything's going to be great. And I think there's going to be a balance. And in the end, technological development is inevitable. So like it's going to happen, and it will either happen correctly, well, good or bad, but there's not really much we can do to stop it. So we have to just make sure we check ourselves along the way, I guess.
Yeah. There's a line in the series. It's actually an AI that says, "Well, we've got to do the best we can. That's what we've always done." And
Yes. Yeah.
and that's really it. I think people want, and it's understandable why people would want this. And obviously, even just saying people means I'm broadly generalizing here, but I can understand why it would be very comforting, especially for people that are new to the subject. They would like, a meme or something that will say,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry because of, but it's going to be, I mean, we've got, okay, so Elon Musk is working on Neuralink, and
Yes.
so for anybody that's watching this who's not aware of what that is, but if you're a fan of the Post-Human series, sort of like The Mind's Eye, but it's a direct interface between computers and therefore the internet and the human brain, and that goes along with a philosophy that may turn out to be the right way, and that is to really make sure that we become the super intelligences, and that we don't end up with a circumstance where
An AI overlord or something.
exactly the AI overlord. The idea of mastering something uh, that is clearly far more intelligent than a human brain, and it just doesn't. I mean, that doesn't happen anywhere else, and that we see in the animal kingdom. I mean, I can't imagine, a dog mastering a person. It just seems to me that as much as it's called the control problem. It's the idea of, if you're going to build something that will be able to make itself rapidly smarter than you. How do you keep that from going out of control? And there's a lot of clever ways of maybe impeding it, but in the end, uh, I mean, how could a human being possibly conceive of what something that will be able to think in all kinds of ways that
Yeah.
we physically, like we literally can't think in those ways. So,
No.
you know,
Especially
one of
when
the,
you have like the internet, like at the tip, essentially this huge neural network. So what the internet is like almost like a mushroom, you know, like it's this mycelium network that spreads across the world, and it will just teach itself and itself, and kind of exponentially grow. So what you can't really actually put a cap on it. So I guess it's like what is it? If you can't beat them, join them, right?
yeah, yeah, I think so. In this book, they try some things, and the things sound like they would work. Ways of, you know, like someone might say, well, of course, we're not going to give it access to the internet. Of course, we wouldn't do that. But there are ways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if something becomes sufficiently advanced, it's going to be able to access, you know, all of the information uh, of our species eventually.
Yeah.
So it's only, you know, it's really just a matter of time. But I like how you put it. If you can't beat them, join them. I like that. And you can imagine a scenario, and I'm not sure exactly where Elon is ultimately planning on going with this, but you can imagine a scenario where more and more of your brain is, or more and more of your thinking, I should really say, is being done by an artificial component of your brain as opposed to your organic brain. You know, some people argue that that's already happening with you know, with, you know, cell phones and
The
how
extension of
much,
our hands, really.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
like it's
and there's things like you know, not remembering phone numbers or not remembering street names and things. And we've already a little bit
yeah.
offloaded things to our devices, um, but uh, uh, this would be taking it to this extraordinary extreme. You can imagine a scenario where, you know, you haven't actually learned with your uh, organic brain new languages, but you can access them and you
Yes.
can speak fluently. Uh, and there's a lot of fascinating philosophical questions, like is that you, um, or not? And if it feels like it's you, maybe it's you. If you get to a point where your organic brain is just doing this teeny tiny, I mean, we're talking like a little 0.0001 of your thinking, then you start wondering, well, do we need that at all? And
Yeah.
at what point did you cross over into being something else? And I really don't pretend to have the answers. I'm fascinated by the questions, and I really love to explore. And then I like to let characters have different viewpoints, and I really, when a character's got that viewpoint, I really try to have that viewpoint when I'm writing that character. And I don't really like to write villains. I don't think I do. I write people who might see someone else as a villain, and even the reader might see it. But then 3 books later, realize they were right. They
Mm.
were justified. Because I feel that's maybe why the post-human series has such a broad acceptance across every walk of life. It seems I've got as many male as female readers, and there doesn't seem to be anything in particular about what country, and especially the thing I'm most proud of is just the political spectrum. Like there's just, it's all over the gamut,
Interesting.
and I love that people have no idea, and they will continue not to have any idea whether I'm a, you know, a hardcore liberal or conservative. I love that they don't know. It makes me, that's exactly what I want, because I don't want people to go into the books thinking there's an agenda.
Yes.
You know, Posthuman is really not a polemic. It's really an exploration of our species. It's Ray Bradbury said that science fiction is just the history of our species birthing itself, which I always love. I find that so
Brilliant.
poetic. And that's what I want. I just want the series to be an exploration of what we're going to be doing, rather than me telling everybody that they're right or they're wrong.
Well, I think it probably appeals to a broad spectrum because it gives potential insight. Because, like, of course, things can be politicized. There can be, left or right developed technology, but in the end, this possibility of AI and of us becoming, transhuman, posthuman, does skip political boundaries and does skip all these other boundaries, like geography and things like that. So I think it interests people because, especially if you know what you're talking about, in the sense of you've got the actual, well, obviously you've done your TED talks, you
Mm.
understand and research technology and where it's going. You really give an actual insight, I think, through fiction, which is great for people, I think.
That's the goal. I mean, I guess for me, if I've got a purpose, it's I think story is actually really important, and I think that when and I'm not saying all anthropologists do this, but when you learn uh, in high school or even elementary school, just a common thing that they like to say that separates what really separates human beings evolutionarily was the opposable thumb, and I've just always thought that that was just too instrumental. I think that what really separates human beings from the other species is, I mean, if we're going to get really scientific, it'd be our neocortex,
Yes.
but the extremely uh, tightly wound spindle cells that allow us to think in directions that, as far as we know, no other animal can do
Hmm.
or can't do very well. There are spindle cells in like dolphins, and I think dogs have a little bit, and um, some different species of and chimpanzees and things like that. But we have so much more,
Yes.
and so story is our greatest way of doing something that the other species can't do. And I think that we see the results of that in our technology. So the way that our civilizations are built, we're able to teach our children very complex things. Not just how to find a rodent that's hidden somewhere, and eat that, and then have offspring yourself, and it's really not going anywhere. But with us, uh, because of the neocortex, we're able to build, well, things like this.
Yeah.
And how incredible is that? But it's not as though one generation just we had nothing and came up with it. It's we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak.
Yes, definitely.
And so I think whether it's um, fiction or nonfiction, I mean, really, what I'm writing about is something that the concepts are all real. There isn't anybody in the stories that's, and I've got no problem with this either. If people want to do this, it's a different way of telling a story, but there's no magic in it. It's all based in uh, theoretical or real uh, technology, and it's speculative, but we're headed that way, and it's and I love the philosophy in dealing with those things. I think those are the things that uh, can help people who might think that if they're reading something and it's nonfiction, or maybe they wouldn't want to watch a TED talk because they would think it was too dry. But they may not realize while they're sitting there watching an adventure movie, uh, or reading something that looks like it's just an exciting. A lot of the reviews that are on the front page, like the front covers of my books, will say it's a thrill ride or it's high octane, but but yet they learn.
It's teaching
And
you something for sure.
yes, there's an impact there, and that's what gives it meaning to me.
Do you find, has there been anything that you have written about, that you've had a hunch, or technology that has basically developed in real life outside of your book? So that you've covered earlier on, and then you found it, it's you're watching it develop outside of the book. Yeah, predicting something essentially.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a bunch. I guess the um, fairly obvious one, I guess I'll jump out with, is that in a couple of the different books in the post-human series, the ones that where I'm telling something from the time frame of what I consider to be very near future. So it is the future, but we're not going out a century or anything. Um, and Dawn of the Singularity was also like that. It was I never say the date, but you get the
Okay.
idea that we're in that 15 years away sort of uh,
Yes.
timeline. And I got the name of it wrong, I think. But I would in both of those books I had AUG glasses, which are AR glasses. Seems to be what is going to catch on.
Yes.
But that's what they are, augmented reality, and that becoming part of everybody's everyday life. So it's interesting that Google Glass didn't really catch on. It had a lot of potential, but there were reasons why I think it didn't catch on. But the news is that Apple's going to get into the game
Mm.
soon, and I think once they do it, then it will become part of our lives. And you can see that that's where it's going. I mean, I don't have the latest iPad Pro, but the one that came out most recently has lidar now, and you can really see. I think the new iPhones that are coming out in the fall are supposed to, and you can see that this is a focus, at least of Tim Cook, of just mapping the real world and making sure that we can uh, put augmented objects into it and do it in a really accurate way.
That's quite
Um,
scary, I find.
yeah.
The especially we had a guy on a few weeks ago who is a VR game designer,
Mm,
and it was very interesting. He was saying about how he can see that it's going to become this is the norm, that right now already that Oculus is very popular, lots, and it's crazy how popular it's getting, but he thinks that the VR and the AR are going to get to the point where you will have people essentially just plugged into the matrix, I guess.
yeah. Uh, Something similar to Ready Player One, I guess, is
Yes.
it. Yeah, I think so. It was. I think I can say this now. Boy, I hope I can say this now. That was
We can't
really
edit this
interesting.
out, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it was when I did the book Dawn of the Singularity. That it was a publisher, uh, and they created the publishing wing for that book because they made video games, and they wanted me to write something that they could then build a video game around, and
Nice.
so which was really fun to be able to universe build, and then have them create this incredible multiplayer PC game that they did. But because they were a technology company before Oculus came out, they had their own headset that they were working on, and I got to try it, and that just really blew me away what they had, and that was all the way back in I think it was 2012 or 2013, 2012 maybe. It was it blew me away then. You could see that these this virtual the potential for a virtual world uh, growing and just becoming so compelling that it may call to people more than the real
More than
world.
the yeah. I think you've got like these what are they like World of Warcraft, the big massive multiplayer online RPGs. I think at the point where VR or AR kind of mixes in with those, then we're going to have a lot of people with IVs feeding them and not getting out, but becoming king of the orcs, I think. Or
Yeah, I don't. That's something that I don't disagree with. I
really,
mean, again, there could be some sort of intervention, I suppose, but you can see a scenario where, I mean, the technology would definitely allow for it, and I think it would be so uh, it would be so compelling to spend most of your time there that you could see people almost becoming addicted to it. That was something that was in Dawn of Singularity. That VR was already very popular, but they had just it's during the course of the book that they bring out this thing called the qualia,
Okay.
and so they no longer have to wear this headset. I suppose it's a little bit like Neuralink, except it's not. It wasn't really physically going into your brain, but it could communicate with your brainwave patterns and just overlay and take you into essentially what would be like sure like the Matrix or like the world in Ready Player One, and it was pretty fantastical and so I got to write it because I didn't have to be the one building it, but I got to write some things and just whatever I could imagine, and you could see why people would much prefer to be there, and to be having those adventures and that's not necessarily a good thing,
No,
but
that
it's
scares me, to be honest.
yeah. Uh, in which ways do you find it scary? Because there are ways. You're definitely right to have some concerns, but I'm interested in which ways.
I feel that it could lead to manipulation and control quite easily.
Hmm.
Um, that if you have somebody who is so engrossed in this alternate world that is not real, essentially that is programmed by another person, the people behind that, especially as it's going to be monetized, that's the thing.
Yeah,
So it leaves it open to a lot of dangerous pathways, I think, to lead down, and it could be controlling in the sense of they could develop it so it's purposely enticing you to stay in there. And I'm not sure what the repercussions could be in the real world outside of that, but I don't know. I think that it could be a dangerous path.
that's terrific. I think what you just created is a concept for a book, for sure, and a movie. So there you go.
Cool. Okay.
You should copyright that right now. But
I'll get
uh,
writing right now.
but it's a little bit like it sounds a little bit like surrogates, although surrogates they were in the real world and it was like a robot that was going out into the world for them while they were uh, they were in like you're describing like a
Hmm.
pod at home basically and controlling this thing and their physical body was deteriorating. And I think in Ready Player One uh, if I'm remembering the actual book. It's I guess a little bit different from the movie, but because in the movie they've got to make sure they hire movie stars and they've got to
Yeah.
be reasonably attractive. But the characters were described like their physical, uh, like they let themselves go somewhat, and that a lot of people like essentially it wasn't even just their own bodies. They were just allowing the real world to rot because who cares? We don't really need it.
Yeah.
Um, and
As
and
long as
so
there's power and some food, some way of just sustaining, then I guess I could see that happening. I've got this image of like this in my head of some dystopian uh, planet where there's just these huge tower blocks full with people plugged into these pods, and maybe there's just enormous fields of solar panels that are generating the electricity for it, and then these food things with drips all running in and outside. It's just, yeah, carnage
yeah,
outside.
yeah, it's yeah. I mean, we just need to figure out a way to get a plot into it. But the setting is absolutely a worthwhile science fiction setting, and it's worthwhile, I think, also for movies too. It's I mean, those are scenarios where you'd like to be able to say couldn't happen, that won't happen, but at the same time, yeah, I guess it could.
It
And
could.
we see little hints of that, I guess, with the way things are even right now. With I mean, it's absolutely true that some of our favorite apps and websites make sure that they rope us in, and they want to keep us on their platform for as long as possible. And you're right, when it's dollars, you can find ways to be really quite manipulative, and there has to be something to stop them from doing that. I think, other than just their honor, or what they say, because it
I
seems like
find.
they're
So I was going
yeah.
to say I don't think honor goes into when it comes to business. So it's not very good self-regulating,
No, I agree
because
with you.
if they're
Yeah.
shareholders, they're legally obliged to follow profit. So they're going to do whatever they need to maximize profit. And then that means getting psychologists in to work out ways to make the app release dopamine by giving you, rewards, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's one of the concerns I also have with the development of superhuman artificial intelligence. Uh, there's definitely ways to do it where I think it would be responsible, and I write about those in the post-human series for sure. Um, but like, the AI in the series is a good guy, but at the same time, uh, you do get concerned with the people that seem to have the most resources, seem to have the most technical know-how, are not necessarily the ones that are philosophically the brightest or
Yes.
the most socially aware and 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 empathetic. And so you do wonder a little bit, and that's one of the big concerns is that race to be the first one across the goalpost, because first across will always have the dominant strategic
Mm-hmm.
advantage. First across might be the one that's not necessarily
The best.
the best
Yeah.
designed, and the one that was taking into consideration how important it is to make sure that this intelligence is uh, kind and cares about humanity. Is basically the main thing that we need to worry about.
I've heard a few. In fact, I think Elon Musk mentioned it, saying there's the kind of race between America and China developing AI, and in general with technology, there's this race because whoever has this is going to be the one with control. And do you want this superpower A or superpower B in control? So they're both rushing towards developing these things, and possibly that means that there are things being ignored because there's such a rush to develop it to be the first.
Yes, yeah. Is it? Where did you see that? Because I want to watch that.
I'm pretty sure that was on one of the Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, maybe the
Great.
first one.
Okay, I'm definitely. I still haven't. I got to catch up on that one. Yeah, that's. It's funny because in my both of my series, I guess, because the Dawn of the Singularity, um, that might continue on as a series, but the post-human series has this as well. Is that China, U.S. And that is something that I mentioned also in my TED talk.
Mm-hmm.
But the uh, when I had to write the scripts for it was for the first two films in the post-human series and submit that into Management 360. They said, "Oh, China can't be in there. That's a non-starter."
Really?
Yeah, so I had to
Wow.
change that. It's the one thing I had to change. To change the country that was a competitor. It's not something where, I mean, the whole series isn't all about China versus the U.S. I mean, it's something where it's a starting point for me to move post that.
Okay.
But it's yeah, it's real. I mean, it's a serious concern. There's no way that any nation state would want another nation state to get there first, and so it becomes almost like an arms race. So it's one of those things where I want I really want as much as possible people to be aware. um, I think people who come out of reading the post-human series, even though the series isn't finished yet, come out of it actually feeling very optimistic. And if anything, I think I get online, that he's too optimistic. But that's a little bit more just me, and that I don't really see the point of hand wringing, but I still also don't see the point of sticking my head into the sand and
Yeah.
not seeing that. Yeah, there's really big challenges and concerns, and we definitely need to be uh, we it just as a I think the more people are aware of it, the better, because you don't want people to be making decisions out of fear, because I think
Yes.
that that's where you end up with the shortcuts being taken. We need some sober second thought about how we build the thing. And yeah, I'm really glad that Elon is trying something uh, to go around and circumvent this
It's quite
disaster
exciting,
that could happen. Yeah,
definitely.
it is. I can't wait to hear more about Neuralink. I hope he actually comes through. I think it's this year. They're planning on
Yes.
putting it into someone.
Yes, they are. I would again recommend both of the Joe Rogan experiences with Elon. He was on last week, I believe, the day after he had his child. So he came on,
Yeah.
and the first one he was quite secretive about some of the stuff. He opened up; it was very interesting. But the second one, yeah, was absolutely very insightful, and he even explained how it works properly, like which is yeah fascinating, very scary, but
Oof.
very exciting.
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah,
It's been on my watch list, but I've been writing Superhuman, which is so long. But you sold me on it, especially
cool.
hearing that. I find that really interesting. He's a not all the things about the the political things recently aside, because I
Hmm.
never get into that stuff, but he is quite an extraordinary thinker, and I
Yes.
guess we're going to get a big example of that today. The fruits of that thinking,
Hmm.
and the way that he thinks and the way that he breaks things down is something uh, that I try to do too. I think that's how I ended up making the movie. Really, it's the same type of thing. I guess if we were to make an analogy, you'd have gas powered cars versus electric cars, and
Hmm.
then film versus digital,
Yeah,
and that there's one that's obviously superior, but there's so many um, forces that make it very difficult to make the change.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I think that that's also connecting it to the present circumstance with COVID. It's maybe the only real silver lining to all of this happening is that it has. I think it's just maybe shaken people. It's been a kick to the complacency, and made people start looking at uh, technology in a different way because of how. Well, I mean, they're dependent on it at first, but then I think they can start to see what the possibilities might be and what the benefits would be, um, as opposed to just all drawbacks and things. The future being pretty much the way the past was, and us not being able to conquer or tackle or challenge the really big problems because it's a tool, and ultimately, I think let's use the tools to make things better. And
Definitely.
same with the movie business. But wow, is that ever just a it what a ride right now. And the people that I talk to that are very invested in the industry say the same thing. Again, nobody knows what's going on or how we're going to come out of it.
I think that's with yeah, with a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, small businesses. Um, it's great to see the way that technology is actually helping. So, like, I have seen a lot of like Facebook Live gigs and concerts. Like, actually, I watched a really good festival at the weekend. Shout out to Meg Hayden who played in that, and there was yeah. The main band set it all up, and they had different musicians, all who joined in via Zoom, I guess. And then for their final set, the main band were actually out in a field,
Hmm.
live streaming from a field. So it almost had this festival feel, and it was great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would much rather be in that field with with a drink in my hand, dancing to the band. But right now it shows that you can make something work from it, and so there is positive coming out of it, definitely.
Yeah, it's the price is too high, and it's too bad that it took that.
Yes.
But it would be really a shame if we didn't use it to make things better. And like
Hmm.
as soon as because the change happened so quickly, but as it happened, my thinking throughout that, besides from let's make sure we don't get sick,
Hmm.
was there's there's so much opportunity here to rethink things, and we know that there's some things that we shouldn't do, um, that we do anyway, uh, and then we paused it for a while, and I guess a great example would just be how many people were commuting to work, commuting to a building, and it was far past time when they didn't really need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Just go and just be there just because that's how it's always been. That's how everyone else does it, and the thinking hadn't really gone any further than that. And so that's one really big positive, because the amount of time that people will save, not being in traffic. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. That's a
Yep.
positive.
I think it takes often, a large event, a cataclysmic event, to create some kind of paradigm shift, because, we are naturally quite complacent on mass anyway as a group. Of course, there are people that are, pioneering things and pushing for changes, but overall, I think, it takes these things. Obviously, it's sad. It's sad. There are people dying, and that we
Yes.
are having this right now. But overall, I can see that we hopefully we learn from it. And these kind of events create positive shifts.
Yeah, I think if this happened and we didn't learn from it and we went back exactly the way it was, I mean, it would
Yeah,
just compound the tragedy. It remains a
yeah,
tragedy, but it would compound it.
for sure.
One of the things I'm also really hoping for too is that I mean, I'd been doing a lot of, well, because of my job, of course, I was doing a lot of research, and I knew that there was this potential for vaccines to come along way faster. I
Hmm.
knew that that was possible, but at the same time, I knew that this was maybe a little early. This was really going to push the tech, and that maybe the pandemic is a few years too early before
Yeah,
a vaccine can be developed in 6 months and deployed. Um, but wow, uh, there's some exciting possibilities, some candidates that are exciting, and so it's not. Of course, we can't count on it, but it's not impossible that there'd be an effective vaccine this year, and that would be so much faster than it's ever happened before. But
yeah,
that's uh, another area where we're seeing that advancement in information technology. I mean, the idea that they were able to sequence COVID and like in China and then just put it online. I mean, that's
that's
incredible.
insane.
Yeah, it's what an amazing advancement. So I guess I like to have my eyes open to everything, whether it's negative or positive. But once you know as much as you can, uh, then okay, so what do we do? How do we go forward, and how do we make things better in whatever it is that we're chasing? But uh, there's there's always a way to make it better, and so I think it's good to be concerned that the tech can be perverted, and especially if it's in the wrong hands, and then just okay, so let's do something about that then, and what can we do? What might be possible? Um, and yeah, I can see answers. And I think that's the spirit of the post-human series. I think so.
I think it might need people like you to spearhead some kind of movement that oversees things, because, like the UN I guess, or WHO, which, World Health Organization, maybe they're not the best thing right now, but something equivalent, but for tech, um, for so that you have like representatives from different nations, and kind of a treaty, essentially like a nuclear treaty, but some kind of tech treaty or agreement in place. I mean, of course, countries don't necessarily stick to treaties, but it could be it could be something that's needed. National, or sorry, International Council of Technology, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, you really wish you could convince every
Hmm.
every country or every player to do that.
Yeah,
It's I mean, it's something I think it's worthwhile f- to pursue. And I think when you say that, that's probably what we need, it's probably what we need. It really is.
yeah,
But at the same time, you're you're also so right I mean, I couldn't agree with you more when you say there's probably going to be someone who breaks it, and so that's something I deal with in my fiction too. The concept of people actually using that communication to just kind of crib and
Yeah.
get ahead or catch up, and then keep the other stuff on the down low. Um, it's part of the nature of just this the accelerating returns of the price performance of technology of software and hardware, and how quick it's improving, that we will end up having a circumstance where smaller and smaller and smaller groups. I'm actually realizing this has got to be part of my TED talk, but smaller and smaller groups will be able to develop superhuman intelligence, because so much more of the thinking, so much more of the work in the actual creation ends up being offloaded to AI, artificial
Yeah.
intelligence
Yeah, I
already.
see.
Yeah. So you end up with a circumstance where it is inevitable that you end up with superhuman intelligence, and I think maybe one glimmer of hope is, we saw with COVID. One of the things I was concerned with, when this was beginning, I I was saying to my wife, for instance, I said way back in February, it's airborne. Um, it was just clear to me. It's just a matter of reading the tea leaves, like the way it was being spread. It I was sure it wasn't going to end up being on surfaces, and then that's what happened. But at the same time, there was a real psychological pushback at the time to saying that how bad this could be. And I'd said to my wife the first time I said something about it, I said, I think I think this is looking like it's going to be the worst thing that's happened to humanity in our lifetimes. And that didn't, she knows I'm a futurist, and when I say something like that, it's like, oh no. If he's saying it, that's maybe it's going to actually happen. And I felt really bad about that, and I didn't want to frighten people or scare people, but what they did that surprised me and made me pretty happy was the fact that the social distancing even happened, and the
Yeah.
fact that people they just went into action so quick, showed me that when there's an immediate danger, that uh, when you can demonstrate to people how dangerous something is, that they will uh, do extraordinary things, and that they're capable of doing extraordinary things. And so, but it needs to be like that. I guess you were saying that we were complacent, so you need that kick in the complacency. When it comes to AI, I think it's a matter of if we could get uh, people to realize that just trying to be first isn't in your own best interest. Like you might think it is, but it isn't if you're not being really careful.
Yeah.
And if they could just understand that, then because nobody wants, or very few people want to kill themselves and the whole world.
No. No,
So
but I think people want to be on top and they want to be number one. So they don't realize that in doing so, they could they could kill themselves and the whole world.
yeah, and so they need to know more.
Yeah,
So I think that's the information that needs to
definitely.
come across as much as possible, and in a way that's as digestible as possible.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing it in a fiction book with that should be fun, and hopefully eventually, well, not hopefully, eventually movies, because I think that will help. I
Mhm.
think so. That's the goal.
I would actually just to I've been popping up on the there's a chat going on, and I should ask a few questions because people have been asking some questions, and I think
Oh,
if you don't mind answering them from people on the live thing. That's
yeah,
cool.
I don't mind at all.
Um,
First of all, hello guys. I've been chatting and not looking at the live chat. This looks amazing. Great. Thank you. The short is a really good short film. Thank you very
Sweet.
much.
We've got the what was it? What would change now if you can go back in the making of Dangerous to Know? I
What
think
would
that's quite a
change
good
now?
question.
That is a good question. That's a great question. Um, I think Jenny and I have figured out what we absolutely needed to have, and what we didn't need to have. So we had more with us. We had more tech with us than we actually ended up using and needing. So we could be more streamlined. But there's some things that I would absolutely love to have, and I'm not sure in 2016 if this was really possible without
Hmm.
some really expensive equipment, but it is possible now to have someone editing in real time. Someone like taking your footage and piecing together the shots that you think are probably going to be the shot, because 9 times out of 10, if you do 10 takes, there's you're the one you think is the best one and ends up being the one in the movie. And so you could end up with, it's not just, I guess they called it dailies back when when they were using film. Someone would literally cut the film together or just show the footage the next day to the director and everybody. But with this would be like hourlies or half hourlies. I mean, every time you film a sequence, you could watch a rough cut of it, and that would speed up post production dramatically. And I can imagine having a sound designer on set as well, actually putting together sound as we're making the movie. So that the post production, which ended up being for us the longest thing, would be dramatically cut down. And so instead of it taking 3.5 years, with the addition of just a couple of people, and now that Jenny and I have demonstrated that we can make a movie, getting someone in for this next one, it's not such a crazy idea anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be possible, and I think we could have it finished really quick, within a matter of months instead of 2 or 3 years. Uh,
That must be stressful, to be honest, like being kind of locked into this project, and it's like almost, do or die because you're putting everything into this. Um, it's not
yes,
like it's just a few months. If it is, it's like, oh, don't worry, in 3 months' time we'll be, back to normality. When you're like, shit, I don't know if this is another year, 2 years, and then 3 years into it, it's
yes, yeah. I think Jenny is like, yes, Ash, yes.
yeah, screaming right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so stressful. Yeah, it was. I didn't know that it was going to take as long as it did. The bottlenecks were just silly things. Like it was a time period where, if I don't think anyone cares anymore, but in 2017, 2018 was when Apple was just taking forever to update their desktops, and so that they
Okay.
were just really slow. And then once, I think it was in June 2018, once we had a, a it was before we didn't get an iMac Pro, but we got the best iMac when they made the iMac Pro announcement, because even the regular one, they'd spec it way up beyond what it was, and that sped us up so much. The
Nice.
software ran so well, and I think in the next 6 months, we did as much as we'd done in the previous 2 years combined. It was so that really helped a lot. But I didn't know that it was going to take so long, and I didn't know how detailed, say, something like sound design actually was. Editing dialogue. But I'm glad that I learned all of those things, because when or if I do a movie that's anything like the traditional way that movies are done, um, nobody is going to be able to pull a fast one on me. Um,
Nice. That's great.
I'll know how it's done. I'll
There's
know if it's
another I think this actually kind of links into what you were just saying. Somebody's asked about what the missing tech is that you need to move forward. Um, I'm not sure if that's directed at the film, but I'm guessing I'm guessing that's what they are talking about.
What's the missing tech you need to move forward?
Yeah.
Um, well, I think that in 2016, being able to take shots that we had done and then to send them over to someone who's working on a MacBook Pro, and that MacBook Pro would have been able to run the software we needed, because everything that we used, the software that we used to make the movie was DaVinci Resolve, and that is just professional software, not expensive. In fact, free if you had one of their cameras, which we did.
Really? So you can make a film literally using free software? Like
Yes.
I would have assumed that that would have been something that costs thousands, yeah, thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I think at the time, I think when we started, the software was $1,000. They've since lowered it to, I think it's 399 or something around that
Great.
number. But if you bought one of their cameras, and their cameras were so much cheaper, even though spec wise they had the same capabilities, like they could film in RAW, and so if you compared that to a Red or an Arri Alexa, those cost luxury car prices. But these cameras, especially the one that I filmed the short film with, was $999, and the cinema camera that we used, I think, was maybe 3,000. So you got the software for free. The issue was that we didn't have the computers that could keep up. But that's not a problem anymore. You
Cool.
can get an iMac or a MacBook Pro. Uh, the hardware's caught up to the software. So having somebody, with a reasonable MacBook Pro on set would be really all you would need, and having a separate person, because DaVinci Resolve, you do color grading, you do editing, but you can do VFX in there, but you can also do the sound, and we did the sound design in there as well, because they have a component of it called Fairlight, and it's professional sound design. So you could have someone taking care of that, and wow, the way, I mean, at that point you'd have actors actually being able to see roughly color graded, but like 90% of how it's going to end up looking, and then edited, and with even some sound. Like, you could actually watch a scene, and if you decide, I don't know if we got it, you could actually go back and film, which is just not something that you would have been able to do in the past. And I know actors would just love to be able to watch a sequence actually edited, because I think it's very hard for them to imagine, when you're explaining, I just need you for this one shot. Like, where does that fit in the sequence? I was doing storyboards for the movie, and that would be the first thing I would do is, in the morning, I'd be storyboarding the things that we're going to film, and I would show the actors and take them through it. I'd show Jenny and take her through it. And I don't know why it took me so long, but it was, I guess, about a week and a half in. And I realized that every time we were there and we had the camera, that they do, so what are we doing? And I was just wasting my time. I stopped doing that. And I think what's more helpful to them is to see it coming together, and then be able to adapt with it and change with it.
Did they give feedback as you were like? I'm guessing the actors were experienced in working in film. So
Mm-hmm.
were you learning from them, or were they? And how was it actually working alongside them, knowing that you're learning everything from scratch?
Great question. It was different depending on who the actor was. So there were definitely actors that I think were, even though I warned everybody that this is really small. The production is really small, but our ambition is giant. That
Hmm.
it's the bar is set at David Fincher, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, like that kind of cinematography, that kind of production value. And yet, behind the scenes, it's just going to look so different. It's going to look like we're at best making some little YouTube movie or something. And you just, I think what got some people to go along with it was just the resume, at least. I mean, if they looked me up, they could see, okay, so he's a bestseller in science fiction and he's done a TED. I mean, he can't be a complete lunatic. I'll kind of go along with it. But I think that it was different with different actors. Like uh, but she won't mind me singling her out in this way. I think Bridget was the one that embraced it the most. I think she embraced it the most. So she was the one that uh, believed that doing it this way could work, and seemed to prefer it that way actually, because there's so much freedom. If things are so tightly controlled usually on the sets that she's on, and it's great to have all these assistants, and I think it's great to have people pumping your tires and everything. I tried to pump their tires anyway, but at the same time, it's like there's a script supervisor. I mean, how much freedom is there necessarily, and unless maybe you're very powerful, you're a producer also on it, and so for her, I think she really loved that. I think for some of the actors that were only there for a day or 2 days, it was more confusing, and so I feel like we had good relationships with all of them, and I feel, especially now that they've seen a fair amount of it, that they're excited. Um, at the time, uh, I'm not. I didn't get the vibe. I think I got the impression sometimes that they didn't. Well, this isn't going to be anything. This can't be anything.
If it's not
Um,
what they're used to, that's the thing. If it's something new and it's like breaking the mold of what they're used to, and they haven't witnessed success from it, so they're probably going to be naturally dubious.
Yeah, I mean, when you're seeing something and it's the first time, and then I'm sure it could feel like maybe it's going to be a student film, or maybe it's worth attaching myself to this guy because he'll make this thing no one will see, but then the next thing might be good. But this one is good. I mean,
Cool.
it's this my standard is really high, and I told the two leads, Bridget and Andrew, that like if it's not good, I won't even release it. I mean, if it doesn't work, because I'm not going to put my name on something that everyone's going to hate or make fun of forever.
Good.
It's got to be good, and so I knew it was possible. Like there wasn't anything, even though the method we were using to film it was different. I knew that what we could put in front of the screen, that there was nothing that there was no magic ability that someone else has. Like David Fincher, mean, he's amazing. Quentin Tarantino's amazing. Scorsese, I mean, we can go through the list, but they don't have some magical ability
No,
to make two actors in a room, with some dialogue somehow better than me if I
no, of
can
course.
master the techniques.
Yep,
We all have that ability, and any of us can do it. It just depends if if you have passion for it, if you want to do it. But any of us can learn to do it.
definitely. I agree 100%. I think it's just putting our mind to it and actually willing to kind of take that plunge, take that step to make the plunge, which you've obviously done, and it's been successful so far, which I
Uh-oh, it froze a little bit.
I think it's pretty groundbreaking, like cool feedback from it. I think that could be like quite quite a stepping stone for other people, like, or inspiration for other people to be like, whoa, shit, I can do this too, which is great. And then that just kind of revolutionizes the whole filmmaking game.
I hope it will. I've got a couple of articles on No Film School that I did during the Kickstarter, and those
Cool.
went pretty viral. And I tried to break it down as much as I could in that short amount of space, how I did it. But the goal there was to inspire people to do it as well, because this is really hard to do. There's no question, but I also know that technology wise, like the current circumstance, we have to, let's just say when we come out of this and we can be together again and we can have actors around, that technology wise, it's it's easier to do. There's more capability. There's things that should help people do it faster. And the fact that they can look at one that's been done that way now, I think should inspire people to say, and just like I said that stuff about Fincher and Tarantino and Scorsese, I also don't have any magical ability to do something different with the actors or do something different in a room with some dialogue. We all have the ability to learn those things. So if you really want it, you can definitely do it. It's possible to do. The budget was not really high. I mean, I think most of the, if we were to say anything was the budget, it was just the time that Jenny and I, like, if I'm working on the movie, I'm not writing a novel, and if I don't have a new novel, I don't have all that income coming in. So there's different ways you could calculate it. And I was really lucky that I could go all in, and I didn't have to work some sort of 9-to-5 job at the same time. But it can be done. I know it can be done. The amount of days that we actually spent filming, I mean, it's possible to do that. It is, even if you've got a job, that's on vacation, that's on weekends, but it is possible. You just have to believe it.
Amazing. I feel that this has been really, really inspirational, and I'm hoping that there are budding filmmakers going to watch this and hopefully get inspired, because I mean, anyone can do anything when they put their mind to it, and I think that's just such an important thing to remember. So do you have anything that you want to shout out or go over before we wrap this up? Because we have been how long have we been? I think we've been about 90 minutes, which is almost a film, right?
Yeah, almost. Awesome. I think we're really close on our YouTube channel, on the David Simpson YouTube channel. I said in the video, I made a video promoting this actually last night, and I said it's when we become a real YouTube channel, we get the 1,000 subscriber and unlock all those extra tools that we would have. I think we have a little over 950 now, so we're incredibly close. And so if people want to check out that channel is actually where the trailer, I think both trailers, and I think something like 7 or 8 extended clips from Dangerous to Know are there. So if you're interested in seeing some of it and seeing what we did, those clips are also on Vimeo, and there's also a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter campaign's over. But on the Kickstarter campaign is where all the links are to, so it's Dangerous to Know, the movie, and there's links to all the media. Mike Flanagan supported us as he's the creator and the director and showrunner, I think, of The Haunting of Hill House, and he did the Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep, and Oculus, and so many other incredible movies.
Great.
And there's an article about that in the media, but just everything you'd want to know about me and what I'm planning on doing is still there as like a historical document. And Superhuman, my next book, will be out really soon, and there's a pre-order on Amazon, and actually the novel version of Dangerous to Know, there's a pre-order for that as well on Amazon. So those will be.
And these are Kindle?
Yep.
Cool.
These will be Kindle exclusive at first.
Great. Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant, really, really insightful, and I'd love to have you on again at some point. I'm following everything, so I'm looking forward to seeing the film as soon as it's out, and I'll make sure to share it around. I'll put up any links in that you send over to me in the description of this video afterwards, and on the podcast channels. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
It was really great to finally get to meet you and talk to you. And what a fun way to do it, Ash.
So hopefully it'll be in person at some point one day after this whole thing lifts.
Yeah, very soon.
Cool.
Fingers.
Nice one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. That was David Simpson on Shifty Perspective. I had so much fun, as always. I absolutely love doing this, and I love the support that we've been getting. It's great that you guys have left some questions. Of course, any other questions you can leave in the comment section below. If you've got any guest requests, we've got some exciting guests coming up every week so far. It's been pretty mind-blowing. So I feel very thankful to be able to speak to these insightful people. So just remember, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. And if you've got social media, we're on Instagram or we're on Facebook. So look up Shifty Perspective. If you have iTunes or any other podcast app, you can download this podcast probably tomorrow. And yeah, keep following us. And thank you